Hello, everybody. Excited to be with you again. Hopefully, everybody had a great holiday. Kyle Allen from Vaco. And got a special guest with me today who I would say is our in house, just IT brain with tech talent. Been doing this a few years, Alex.
Hey,
So
Cal.
Alex leads our entire tech division here in Nashville, working with me. And I wanted to bring him on today because he's got so much intel on how to find the great talent, because we get that question a lot, and what to do, and as a hiring manager, and as a candidate too, finding the job. So wanted to bring you on, Alex. Glad you're here.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here.
For sure, for sure. Give everybody a quick snippet. How long have you been doing in the staffing recruiting industry? Blow our mind, Alex. How long have you been doing this?
Man, I have been doing this crazy staffing thing for about 25 years. Been with Vaco for 17.
Yeah.
So yeah, been at it a while.
You were doing this pre-cell phone, pre-email,
This is
correct?
correct. And I was on Taylor's Talk a few months ago and talked about rolling around Knoxville with quarters in my cup jar to make sure if I got lost, I could pull off and use a
Make a phone
payphone to
call.
call them, figure out where
That's
I
right.
am.
Well, I know you've evolved like us all, and we're gonna have some great conversation today. I really want to pick your brain just on where the market is today. We're getting so many questions from clients of ours and wannabe clients, and trying to get our attention and candidates. I think the biggest thing as far as how to find the best tech talent, obviously outside of, you can always give us a call, but at the end of the day, you can give us a call and you still need to do these things, right? Because there's so many things outside of just finding the talent. And that's where I wanted to kind of start today, Alex, is like the companies you're dealing with, knowing who you are as a company and what you're looking to accomplish when you hire. We've talked about this over and over again, and you have some great points. I mean, how important and imperative is that for a company to understand that?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of where it starts. You've got to define who you're going to be as an IT shop, right? And what type of support do you have? What's the nature of your company from a product perspective? Are you a IT product company, right, where you're having to compete with best of breed technology? In which case, you're probably trying to hire the best of breed talent and trying to stay bleeding edge or cutting edge, and your IT technology and team is going to take the lion's share of the money, right? You're gonna have to have your CFO lockstep with you to make sure you're sharing that vision. It's kind of like the coach GM football analogy. So, if that's the case, you're going after the blue chip prospects and playing at that level. If that's not you, that's cool. Maybe you're more, supporting some commercial off-the-shelf stuff and doing some integration work, or maybe you have some legacy stuff that you're maintaining and keeping the lights on. It's not broke. You don't need to fix it. But you're probably going after a different type of developer, maybe based on their experience or interest levels. The tech stack's going to drop a lot of that. So I think knowing who you are, being true to that, and it's so important, because if you're not true to that, and if you're misleading, maybe you're not intentionally misleading, but paint a picture that's not accurate, then you're going to have a retention issue. So it doesn't really do you any good if you're not being true to who you are, going out and trying to wrangle in the best of breed or most expensive resources, if they're only going to walk out the door, and then you have the collateral damage of, well, don't go over there because they don't have their stuff together, or they're not playing with the technology, and you get a bad name in the market. So
Totally.
Yeah, be true to who you are and give a realistic job preview. Tell the story of where you're at, and maybe your goal is eventually to get there, but you're not there yet, and that's fine. And that could be appealing to somebody who's a best of breed, architect. They want to come in and help you get there. That could be fun.
Yeah.
So
Talk about a bit. We hear this a lot as far as people, people don't come to us and ever say, "Hey, I'm looking for C talent that is just okay." I mean, every time we get a call, Alex, what do they say? What does every employer say?
Right. No,
They
I
want
get you.
right. They want the best. They want the biggest and brightest. And they also come to us with a list of, hey, we need 10 things, right, that they needed this experience. And the reality is, if somebody comes and checks all the boxes you're looking for, the runway for this individual to grow and learn is going to be really short, right? And they're going to leave you. So talk about kind of getting creative with their talent pool, as far as you may not have the resources, or if you do, how are they getting creative on who they're hiring, how they're retaining talent, how are they attracting talent in that sense?
So, yeah, I mean, part of attracting, it's all about the right fit. So if you're, and again, I guess this ties into what I was saying about be true to who you are in job preview, but I think the companies that are able to really describe the nature of their environment during the interview process, and even in the ads that they're posting or putting videos out there on LinkedIn about, their team, but maybe talking about, some of the individuals on the team, what their makeup is, what are some of the products that are being delivered, and how is it benefiting humankind, right? Like, what is the overreaching goal of the IT team in support of the organization, and how does that fit into the industry and the domain as a whole? I think the more transparent people are, the more creative they are with how they position their team and the individuals on their team and frame it. I've seen some pretty cool websites out there where each developer is highlighted, where you can click on their image and it spins around and it talks about what they do for fun and hobbies and where they come from.
Makes them relatable.
Yeah, make it relatable, and it's more about that kind of team family dynamic. I think getting into that, so kind of the social media marketing connection, tying that back to, in the old days, 20 years ago, you post an ad, name of the company, role, and requirements, and now that's just not going to cut it. So you've got to be creative. You've got to, try to find ways to differentiate yourself from the other shops that are going after the same type of talent. Yeah.
Well, what we found too, Alex, with this, and we do this a lot with surveys, and we survey our employees, we survey our consultants, we survey our clients, is ask your current employees that are in your seat right now, that are working for you, with you. What do you guys want? What are some thoughts, and how can we make this place better? Because I feel like the pressure with me of leading an office is always like, oh, I've got to have all the answers. And the reality is I just need to set the table for people to come bring in ideas, and we just all say yes together. And so I think as executives, there's this pressure of like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to attract the young people. Well, ask, really, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, you've got to, if you're trying to hire a certain skill set, you've got to put yourself in their shoes. What are they going to want to see during the interview process to be attracted to it? And then once they're there, you've got to live up to it, right? So that you retain them and they see it as a long-term kind of career journey. Totally. One thing that Google was famous for years ago was offering R&D time, right? Innovation time. So, again, if you're looking for developers, that's a way to be creative.
Totally.
You build it in, but then you better live up to it and give that to them, or else.
That's right. I think the biggest thing with people is it's super easy to talk about culture and say you're going to have a good culture. It's a whole nother deal to go actually have one, physically execute it, where your people are buying into it. It takes money, it takes time, it takes planning, it takes sacrifice, right? Yeah. To give the people the space to go do what they want to do, whether it's a charitable side or whether it's innovation from their people. But if saying, hey, we care about our employees, do they really? Right. A lot of people say it. Not a lot of people do execute it.
Yeah. In the, 10 years ago, the way they would show that they have such a great culture is, well, look, we have that dusty ping pong table in the corner, and we've got a tapped keg and all this kind of stuff. And, everybody kind of did the same old thing. Well, now with the remote workforce, that's even, less important, and that's kind of played out. So, what are some other things that make you unique, that are employee centric? Again, the R&D time is something. And then, what is the person joining when they take that position and join your role, what's the greater good that's being served, and what does that company stand for? I think, a long time ago is extremely transactional in the way people looked at the relationship with their employer. But, now a lot of the newer generation folks, they want to be prideful, proud of their company. And so, charitable activities, you touched on that, diversity inclusion initiatives, what is the heart and soul of the organization? And it's imperative that comes through during the advertisement and interview process as well, and that's a way to differentiate.
Yep.
So yeah.
No, totally. Well, Alex, obviously I would say tech was doing work from home and remote before work from home and remote was cool, right? And now it's obviously even shifted even further. We did a tech survey recently, and I think we got 400 to 500 responses, somewhere in the Nashville area, somewhere outside. I'm going to try to get a link in there so you guys, if you haven't seen that, can get that report from us. But I was shocked. 69% of the people that took the survey, tech professionals, work from home, and 23% said they have some kind of work from home flexibility. So 89% of the people that took that survey have a flexible work arrangement in a world that we're still getting a little bit of pushback from some people that want to be in office all the time. What are some ways companies can come up with how to do that? Are they being adjustable? And then also kind of advising, how do you keep a company culture when you're remote?
Yeah. Well, as far as the culture, you have to be very intentional about, how do you keep people together? I'm old school, so I really enjoy having at least a hybrid where, you can be together and celebrate victories in person. But, for some, it's just not possible. You have a distributed team, nationwide or even international. And so there are some real challenges there. Some of the things that we started to do during COVID that were cool, we did poker nights. We did some trivia stuff. You were responsible for some of that. So some intentional after hours team building type activities. And again, you can talk about that during the recruitment and interview process as well to help sell some of the ways that you're going beyond just being, doing your daily stand up, which, that's fine and good, but you're not really going to learn about your coworkers that way. Well, you will to some degree, but not as much as you might want to. So, that's a cultural thing. And then as far as, everybody's throwing money around, crazy money. But what was interesting about the survey that we did, and it was, Nashville market, the number one motivator to consider a new opportunity was health benefits. And then number two was paid time off. And number three was flexible schedule. So money wasn't in the top three.
It never is.
Right. And it definitely isn't going to keep people if you just throw money at them. You might keep them for another 3 to 6 months, but they'll eventually leave, which is why counteroffers are, I don't do counteroffers. But anyhow, so, with health benefits, you can be creative with that. I mean, like at Vaco, we have pet insurance, right? A lot of people, like our dog is our third child. That's just the way it is. And so, you can be creative and kind of, find some benefits that don't cost an arm and a leg, but might be appealing to somebody.
Well, you could also, I think too, and when I say benefits too, it could be just outside the core offering that your company is doing. You get kind of creative with your team and saying, hey, we're going to go do a wellness day. Let's go all go work out, or maybe it's a bunch of individuals that love yoga or go on a walk. I don't know what it may be. There could be something you can do together. Sydney and Alfred have asked, as far as what are some tangible ways that we're advising clients on retaining their tech talent, and then in a remote culture, so retaining and just culture. I mean, I think Sydney would kind of hit on a lot of those, and how do you keep a company's culture when it's remote? I mean, I think Alfred, one of those ways for me at least is to check on individuals, having each line of business, the managers checking in one-on-one with the individual, because I think there's a really big combine of personal and professional lives that we're kind of blending. And I think people are working harder than ever now from home. And it's in trying to manage kind of the day-to-day stress that the outward pressures are pushing in on us. with all the pandemic type of work and then the increasing workload. And so I think a really good way as far as just checking on the individual themselves, in addition to having teams and things and asking the question, hey, how you doing? Right. And so that's a real powerful question that even I need to ask more, and stop and doing that. And I think it's taking the time for that. Alex, what about you? What are you guys advising
Yeah.
for clients to do?
I mean, that's great advice. And it's kind of like, I have kids and they're often not going to come to me with issues. I'm going to need to be intentional about going to them and just proactively asking how they're doing, even though they might shrug it off most of the time and not want to be bothered. But once in a while you hit them at the right time and they open up and they're like, these are some issues or concerns I have. So I think, having a regular cadence of reaching out, whether they're remote or not, that's just a management best practice to check in. But I will say, with people being 100% remote, they might be more neurotic or disenfranchised than some that are on site. So probably checking in more often than not is a good idea there. And it can be as simple as, hey, how's it going? Right? It doesn't need to be, you're not trying to lead the witness to some problem. It's just that you care and that you're keeping an open door policy, because if you have an office and they're on site, you have an open door. Well, here it's a virtual open door. But I think, driving that is important. And then, going back to technology specific, even if you're not necessarily currently leading edge, I think that you still want to invest in career development, technology development. That's the best way to retain top tech talent. As long as they're learning the new skills, and maybe with their R&D time, or they might have little widgets they can build, kind of experimenting with some of the tools. I think they'll be happy because, let's face it, even if they're happily employed and have been there a few years, every IT person is going to be keeping an eye to the future and what their next step's going to be. And so keeping that resume freshened up with, newer tech, or at least some depth around the tech stack that they have, you're doing them a disservice, and you're fooling yourself if you think that not spending some time and money in that is going to insulate you from losing them. They're going to become flight risks if you don't do that.
No doubt. Talk real quick, Alex. You've hit on this a little bit with this best of breed talent with companies, and maybe they're on the cutting edge of just internal technologies and systems they're using. How does that help them? I think I've heard you say this before, where, hey, we want the best in talent to help us implement whatever system they may be, right? That's cutting edge, that a lot of the top developers would love to do. And they're really builders, but you've seen where companies hire a bunch of builders and people that want to grow and learn. And then all of a sudden they get done with the project. And now all of a sudden they're like, hey, can you just maintain it for us? And it's just not fun for them anymore. Like, they're not growing and learning the newest stuff. And so talk about that as far as like hiring for that type purpose, and maybe what's an avenue that they could hire for. And then once they're ready to maintain, that's a whole nother skill set.
Yeah. So I think, we had talked about that, as the example I gave was, if you're not a IT product company, right, which, it's the arms race of competing with, the software, whatever domain or space it is. But let's say that you're still wanting to maybe play with some newer tech and evolve, you want to sunset some older systems, which, things do run out of support in time, and you're kind of forced to keep up to some degree. But instead of going out and trying to, play at that, I call it the Alabama, Georgia level, as far as, trying to bring in blue chip prospects all the time.
Tennessee soon enough, Alex. Tennessee soon enough. And
maybe
Miami. So.
I like to say the Hurricanes, but there you're using strategic staffing, right? So you're going to go out and pay the big bucks for an SME level consultant or firm to come in and help create the roadmap, current state, future state, and lead the way. And then you can hire some less experienced resources to learn and maintain and grow into that. Because the reality is, if you put all your eggs in the basket of bringing in the blue chip architect to come in as an FTE, they're still going to leave after they've implemented the initial version, most likely, unless you have version 2 coming right behind it. they're going to get bored. So that was the context of our conversation. Just being honest with yourself, and you don't want to mislead them into thinking that this is going to be a continuous evolution if it's not. So that's how you get a bad rep in the market.
Yeah, or bringing in a consulting team to kind of do the build,
right.
Best of breed. But a lot of consultants are going to be, that's what they do, right? Staying top of the market.
Yeah. You're going to pay for it either way. You're
right.
either going to pay for it by trying to spend the big bucks to assemble the high-end team and then constantly have to replace them as they leave because you can't retain them, or you pay for it up front with obviously a premium cost to a consulting service, but then you have more continuity downstream after you get into maintenance mode with, again, some of the less experienced people that they're going to jump all over that. It's a learning opportunity, right?
Totally. Yeah. Well, Alex, let's finish up with probably the biggest question that we get. It's always the big one, but it's really never that we've talked about this. It's never the reason people move, but it's almost like it's table stakes in terms of just salaries, right? And I've personally been doing this, we'll call it 16 years, I guess. And in my 16, I've never seen salaries move like they have moved in the past 12 to 18 months. It's been absolutely crazy. And I'm almost, every time somebody asks me about specific salaries, I'm scared to give an answer because I'm not sure how much it's moved in the past since I did it last. But talk about just salaries now, because I know a lot of people try to say, well, we have a budgeted number of X. I'm like, hey, I totally get that, but we're not just in Nashville anymore, are we? With salaries.
Yeah. That's the thing, and again, it goes back a little bit to the tech stack that you're using, that the types of resources you're trying to hire, but you're competing globally. You're definitely competing nationally for these resources, right? When a lot of these West Coast companies just went 100% remote and leaned into it, they started coming to the Nashvilles and the Huntsvilles and the Birminghams and cherry picking and poaching. And, let's say that developer with 10 years of experience in Nashville is making $125K. In San Fran, let's say they would have been making $200 for cost of living. So the San Fran company comes in and drops $160. So it's kind of in the middle there. And that's a $35,000, $40,000 increase for the Nashville-based developer. And the San Fran company is saving $40K. So it's a win-win for both of them. And the loser is the smaller market who's not caught up to the reality of these inflated salaries for these resources that everybody's trying to secure. So, it's kind of that arms race thing.
Well,
right?
Totally. And I think a lot of people say, well, I can't afford that. I'm like, well, that's totally fine. But it goes back to kind of what you mentioned earlier as far as benefits. What's your story? What are you offering? Like, what's the culture? Like, you can sell outside of money. It doesn't have to be the best and most expensive. There obviously are going to be people that that's what they're going to go for every single time, and they're going to end up chasing miserable sometimes, right? Yeah. But kind of bringing that back full circle is like, it's not all about money, but you also got to have a story behind what you're selling.
Yeah, and there's still plenty of people who enjoy going on site and having some of that maybe 1 or 2 days a week. There's some folks who love the 100% remote, and there's definitely an audience that prefers to still have some of that connection with some of the FaceTime, with a couple of days. So,
well, I think like anything in America, it's never as to the extreme that we think it is in the moment, right? It'll come back to the middle a bit, but the days of like 5 days a week in the office are probably done from a tech standpoint and other flexibility. But I'm with you. I love people. I love being in the office, the interaction. I'm probably more in the office than out. But I think what we have come to realize, at least I have, is that we were talking 3 years ago about work-life balance, 5 years ago, 7 years ago. Hell, they were talking about work-life balance when I came into my career 20 years ago. I feel like now we finally have entered an arena where companies are like, we got to get our stuff together, right? And I think flexibility and working from home truly does allow that work-life balance where they can manage their personal life. If, hey, everybody's got the cable guy coming from 8 to 12, right? And you're like, what do I do? And you could never get that stuff done. And so I think, and with kids and commutes and just all gas, everything. I mean, I think you're actually giving more value. You're putting more money in your employees' pockets by giving them the flexibility to kind of manage their day. But then also too, there comes an expectation, right? And so I think you can spend a whole another 20 minutes on just working from remote and coming through with expectations and managing those and not over micromanaging. Hint, that may be a future topic of ours. But yeah, I think you make a lot of great points, Alex, on finding the tech talent. How finish? Go ahead.
No, I was just saying.
Yeah. Tell us, Alex, how do we find you if we want some advice from you or need some people?
Yeah, so email me, alexn@vaco.com. And I don't tweet like I should. I don't post like I should. I need to get better at that. That's a 2022 commitment.
Love it.
But yeah, shoot me an email, drop me a line.
alexn@vaco.com. Add banner. So yeah, that's a perfect one. Well, awesome. They're right there. alexn@vaco.com. That's where you can find him. Appreciate the time, Alex. This is fun.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Do it again. So everybody, we will see you in a few weeks, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.